Thank you that you're here. Om Thank you. So today we will talk about some basic concepts for the yogic anatomy. So for subtle yogic bodies and all of these things. And in this context we'll talk about the nadis at very first, and also about what is Kundalini, because this is somehow connected to it. So about energy, about the nadis, and about how these things to a certain degree are connected to the relationship of the individual to the universe. Okay, how the nadis reflect the relationship of the individual to the universe. So we also look in the Shiva Samhita for this, because the Shiva Samhita, is a quite modern, late tantric texts from the 17th century, but it's very, very beautiful, and it explains a lot about this relationship of the individual to the whole. Okay, so we had this idea, which I already talked about, that everything that is outside is also inside, and that every subtle principle, or every gross phenomenon, every gross outer phenomenon that you experience, okay, like night and day, or like wakefulness or sleep, or externality and internality, exists also on a subtle layer in reality, and from there basically ripens into the gross reality. So there is a subtle reality outside, and that subtle reality creates the gross reality we experience. Okay, and not the other way around, that we experience a gross reality, and that's why we imagine a subtle reality beyond. So the Indian idea is that everything first exists on a subtle level and then becomes gross. Like, I give you an example, okay? Like the idea of form, or the form as an idea, okay? Almost like a Platonic idea, the form. And then from that form, the vision, the idea of vision that can capture that form, and from that idea of vision, the image, okay, that is a specific form of vision, and from that idea, from that image, the sensual organ that can picture an image, And from that idea of the sensual organ, the actual sensual organ that is there, okay? Which implies also the structures in your brain in order to mirror or in order to process that information from the sensual organ. So somehow the idea of vision is before the actual vision. This is somehow an Indian idea. And in the same manner, you know, and all the processes that are outside in the universe exists secretly within you. So everything that's outside is also within. This is why the journey to the inside actually is a journey to the outside. So if you really want to understand the outside, you have to travel inside. This is very interesting. And this is also somehow the rising of Kundalini. Kundalini rises at the moment you can withdraw the pranas into the center. You can start to travel inside. This is the moment where Kundalini can be experienced. So when you go to the inside. Okay, so there is the outer world inside of you. The nadis, which are depicted as energy channels, okay, are in a way, these energy channels are your flavors of experiences. And somehow, since you experience the outside world, they are the outside world inside of you. Okay, that's what they somehow are. So every phenomena that exists outside in the world exists within you in form of a nadi, so in form of an internal experience. You know, I did shiatsu a long time ago. I did a shiatsu practitioner training. So, and when I did it, what was very interesting for me is when we did the work on the meridians, you know, to touch somebody, touch the meridians, that when you're doing this, you're feeling these meridians. And you're feeling the points inside these meridians. And what surprised me a lot is, and this is something you can experience when you do shiatsu, that you start to feel every flavor, the quality, you know, you can just say quality of every point inside your body. And you know what these qualities are, which is so surprising? These qualities are phenomena in nature. Like especially you press a specific point and then you have the feeling of leaves moving over the ground in the forest. And then you press another point, then you have the feeling it's water rushing over a stone. And then you press another point and you have the feeling it's sunlight falling on a rock. And then you press another point and you have the feeling it's like dry stones on a windy place. You know, it's very much, all these points, they are qualities of nature. And then you press another point and you have the feeling it's like the wind moving up into the stars. And then you have another point and it's like the space behind the sun. You know, things like this. It's very much all these elementary qualities which exist in nature, you know, phenomena in nature, they exist within you. And I tell you, experiencing this makes you feel suddenly very much connected. You understand that you are born out of these things. You know, you as a human being, you think that you are something different, you know, you're this thinking, very much intelligent animal that is so proud to live in this cultural environment and that is so elevated from nature. And then you experience this and you feel that your body is just nature. You know, you are these rocks and the water and the leaves, and you are the swamp water that is stinky, and you are that dry desert, and you are the top of the mountains, and you are all of these things. All these things are inside of you, and maybe, you know, they must be inside of you, because if they wouldn't be inside of you, you couldn't experience them if you would go there. Maybe the only reason you can experience the spaciousness of the mountains is because they're inside of you. And the only reason why you can experience this deepness of the swamp waters with this fertile movement is because it's inside of you. You know, these elements, they circulate inside of you. And the nadis, you know, and I have to add to this that the meridians in Chinese medicine have almost no correspondence to the nadis in India, but I come later to this, why this is the case. But in any case, the basic idea of that there is that there is this energy inside of you, and the Chinese idea is, or the Japanese idea with shiatsu, that this energy is mirroring the 5 elements and the processes in nature, and the Indian idea, which is almost the same idea, is that these meridians mirror the processes in the universe, which are basically the transformations of the 5 elements. So it's the same thing, you know. So you have this idea that the inside is mirrored to the outside. Good. So the Indians, just to say that, you know, are not so interested in the Indian culture which element now each meridian is, or each energy channel is, or where exactly in the body from an anatomical point of view certain elements circulate. And they are not so interested in this because yoga, also the yogic sciences, are more sciences of consciousness than they are sciences of the body. And also we are more interested in consciousness. That's why they would say earth is from the navel, no, earth is from the let's say from the root downward, okay, and water is somehow from the navel downward, and fire is everything that is from here till the navel, okay, and air is everything that is upward till the throat, and space is everything that is above the throat. Mm-hmm. Why? Because you're just using this distinction to focus your consciousness on and to have a certain internal experience, but the aim is not to manipulate the body. Whereas in Chinese medicine and also in Japanese medicine, the aim about dealing with the meridians is having influence on the body, you know. So the aim is treating hemorrhoids, or the aim is treating heart problems. So if this is the aim, you have to pay closer attention how the body is connected to the meridians, of course, because you have to pay attention to this. The Indians did not pay attention to this because it's not interesting for them. They have anyways Ayurveda as a medical system, which is mainly dealing with herbs, okay, and the balance of energies, and the nadis are mainly which we will come to, you know, a science that leads to meditation and to different stages of consciousness, different stages of insight in meditation. Okay, so knowing this now, that the internal world reflects the external world and the external world exists within, we look at the Shiva Samhita, which is exploring these ideas, and then directly we come to the nadis. Okay? You will see the Shiva Samhita is remarkably beautiful, I have to say. You should read it all, by the way, all of the Shiva Samhita, and you'll find out. I found out for myself, I don't know what you find out, but I found out it's a very, very compassionate book. It's somehow, I know, it's compassionate. In this body, Shiva says, in this body there's Meru, connected with 7 islands. In addition, there are rivers, oceans, mountains, fields, and lord of these fields. You know, what is Meru? Meru is the holy mountain, okay? And the holy mountain is the spinal cord, you know, because it's the stairway to step up, you know, so it's the stairway from which you can go higher, so it's the mountain, okay? So he says in this body there's the spinal cord, basically. He's just using the term Meru, mountain, the holy mountain. Connected with 7 islands. What are 7 islands? 7 places to rest. Yeah, it's 7 chakras. So it's 7 places to transcend, or in this case 7 places, you know, islands. What is an island? It's a place you are in an ocean. Mm-hmm. You know? So it's somehow, the chakras are the same, you know, there are places you experience. You know? In this pada there is the mountain, Meru, the holy mountain, connected with 7 islands. But in addition, it's not everything, you know. There are rivers, oceans, mountains, and fields, and lord of these fields. So it says this internal world is actually inhabited. You know, it's inhabited by, there are rivers, you know, you look inside, many rivers are flowing around, you know, and there are oceans, vast oceans, you know, and there are mountains and fields and kings of these fields. So entities that rule over a place. you know. And in this body, he continues to say, there are seers and sages, you know, the holy people in there living, seers and sages in this body, and all the stars and the planets, holy places of pilgrimage, places of worship, and also the gods of these places. So it's saying that, you know, there is really, literally a whole universe in there, and also wisdom is in there. There are holy men, holy women, gods, and places of worship, which means there are, what is a place of worship? A place of worship is a center of power. You know, that's the place from where you worship. So there are, you could say, mandalas in the body. You know, there are places of power, specific places. There's Stonehenge in your body. You know, the pyramids are there, places of worship. The moon and the sun, the creator and the destroyer, travel in this body. There are also ether, air, fire, and water and earth in it. There are in this body all creatures of the three worlds, encircling the Mount Meru, so encircling the center. They are all creatures of the world, and they are engaged in their prescribed duties. In this body, now, he who knows all about it is surely a yogi, there is no doubt about it. So it means if you have consciousness to see that, then you're a yogi. In this body, which is called Brahmanda, there is the nectar-rayed moon with 8 kalas, properly located on its own place at the top of the spinal column. So he's saying, you know, Brahmanda is the egg of Brahman. So it's like, it means microcosm. It's literally this term. So Brahmanda means egg, you know, egg is that what gives birth to a creature, it's an egg, and in this case it gives birth to the whole universe. And it exists in form, because Brahma, the egg of Brahma is the creator, so it's the egg of the creator. And what does creator create? The world, so it's the egg of the world. So like your body is the egg of which the world comes forth. Everything is in this body. You see, and I find this extremely beautiful, because we have to shut up our stupid mind. What I think is so great is that Swami Lakshmanju, you know, he was asked, what is the mind? And he said, well, the mind is what thinks stupid thoughts. Was his definition. It's that what thinks stupid thoughts. And what I mean, when you think about this, what that means is, doesn't mean that the mind only thinks stupid thoughts. It means that that definition of that what is mind starts there, where you start to think stupid thoughts. What is a stupid thought? A stupid thought is a not helpful thought in relationship to the actual highest goal of reality. Well, most thoughts are not helpful for this goal. That's why most of mind is stupid thought. So, but why am I telling you this? I'm telling you this because we have many concepts about what the world is. And we have many concepts about what we are and how limited we are. And we have many concepts about how the universe begins and ends and how we are inside there and whatever, and if there is a God or not, or if there is something that we actually, which is so funny, we have a concept about what we comprehend and also what we not comprehend. But the truth is that most of the things, I think there are many things of which we do not know that we do not know them, but they are still existing. But we have a very clear concept about what these things are, which is completely impossible. We think that we know many things and that our knowledge and the perceivable knowledge ends at a certain place. But our knowledge is so limited, we cannot have any conception of that. We cannot even know what we do not know. There are for sure many things out there of which we by far will never know that we do not know them. Because they are so vast that they comprehend even the they explode even the possibility of comprehension. You know, they are far away from what we think that we could ever comprehend. And what that means is that when we really want to understand the world, because this is something we can know, you know, we can know that we do not know. And therefore, if we want to understand the world, it's important that we make ourselves silent. You know, somehow, that we make ourselves humble in the face of the great unknown. somehow, that we empty ourselves. And I think it's not too far off if we're just looking inside and we're just allowing the whole world to be within. Because you may think, how is it possible that the whole world is inside? My body is so small. But hey, don't think. Just allow it to be. It's true. You know, it's beyond your comprehension. It's nothing you will understand. It's just something you will experience. Because I tell you something really cool, and this will amaze you. I tell you that actually you do not need your mind to understand the universe and its mysteries. It's not necessary. Because people could say, you know, a very smart person would argue and say, well, but isn't it that we want to understand the mysteries of the universe, so we have to ask the question if what we know or what we do not know and so on, you know, we have to search for knowledge. And of course, we have to. But if you want to experience the world, funnily, you don't need to. Because all the universe is already in the experience, which means you do not need to understand the world to be able to experience it. And you do not need to understand why the whole universe is in your body in order to experience it. You do not need to understand the mystery of reality in order to experience it. The great thing is that maybe your mind is too small to comprehend it, but your being is big enough to experience it. You know, you can just be from the heart and be amazed. And funnily, you know, the more the concepts you have in your mind shut up, the more the actual magical experience of the world comes forth. When you're a little child, you experience so much and you know so little. And the more you know, the less you experience, till you're dry and dead. And maybe after a while then, you think, I should let go and become a child again. And then you experience again. But before you don't. So I think this is very important. Because somehow what he's saying here also is that if the whole world is inside of you, you know, if all the universe is there, all you need to do is surrender within yourself. You know, there is somehow nothing outside, you know. You just can surrender within yourself and it's all there. You know, there are these mountains and the sages and so on. And your body is the egg of Brahman. It's the egg of the Creator. Which is so beautiful because it tells you also, according to what I said, that there are many things of which we don't even know that they are beyond our comprehension, you know. But it also means that even those things are inside of us, and that when we transcend ourselves, we can travel there, maybe, and one day discover them. You know, always greater stages of discovery are waiting within. And then he's saying something else. He's saying, you know, that there is the moon and the sun, the creator and the destroyer, travel in the body. And he continues then to say, this moon is facing downwards, constantly pours down its ambrosia day and night. And this nectar again further divides into subtle parts. So the moon is pouring down nectar in the body. One of them goes over the body and nourishes it through the psychic channel called Ida, which means nourishment, like the waters of the heavenly Ganges. This ambrosia certainly nourishes the body through the channel of Ida. This ambrosial ray is located on the left side. The other ray, pure, milky, and permeated with bliss, enters into the spinal cord through the middle psychic path called Sushumna, to which the moon is attached for creation. The sun is located at the base of the spinal column with 12 colors. Through the psychic path of Pingala, the Lord of creation pushes the nectar upwards with its rays. So there is not always this depiction of Pingala, okay? That the one is upward and the other is downward. But what is meant here is, there is this part inside of you which is Ida. And Ida is that what is nourishing, okay? And the sun is that what is consuming. I continue so that you understand better. This sun certainly ingests the essence and ray emanated nectar. It travels through the body along with the atmosphere. The psychic path on the right side, Pingala, is another form of the sun, the giver of nirvana, liberation. The sun, lord of creation and destruction, moves in this path through the auspicious zodiacal signs. So he's basically saying that the left side of the body is governed by nourishment and the downward flow of nectar. Okay? The right side of the body, or the right channel, is governed by the upward movement of the rays of the sun. Okay? That is the lord of destruction also, and the giver, so that what gives life, but also that what destroys, and it is the giver of liberation. Okay, and it moves through the 12 auspicious signs. So it's like, it's connected to the sun. Yeah, so it's connected to the processes of the sun. The moon, the moon is also depicted to be the governor, or the one who governs the night. The night is the time in which we are nourished, in which our mind and emotion is nourished, in which we fall in unconsciousness, of course, because we're not conscious of our activities at night, or at least we hardly have conscious control over them, even if we are conscious about them afterwards. So, and at the same time, the state of unconsciousness, of not being in charge, is that state in which we have fed. It's like being a little kid somehow, isn't it? Because a kid is also not in charge, but it is still fed at the great breast. And somehow, the state of the sleep, the state at night, is like falling back into a baby form. And people also hug themselves like this. They sleep like babies and they drink from the great breast. But it's not so much the breast of your physical mother, it's somehow the breast of the cosmic mother, which is depicted as the nectar, which is the moon. You could imagine next time you're falling asleep that the moon is actually a gigantic boob, and there is beautiful nectar, which is the milk of the moon falling out of it, and you just go there to drink the whole night. Which is, I think, a very, very beautiful picture. So it's the nourishing aspect. But at the same time, it is inconsciousness, so it is inability. You're not acting in that state. You're inactive. You're absolutely passive in all of your being, which is, of course, no state in which you can live. And then the other side of your life, of your whole existence, is the side, you could say, that is governed by the sun. The sun is governed by activity, constant activity. It is outside. You don't remain in your inside dreams or your sleep-like state. You are very conscious, you're self-alert. But you're not alert about your actual nature also. You're alert about the outer world. You're alert about your sensual impressions. You're alert about your own aims. You're alert about the outside. And at the same time, you're exerting energy. So you're going out and you're exerting. And what happens is that when the night time is the nourishing time, this is the exhausting time. So you exhaust yourself. That's why it's destruction, In the beginning, in the night, you feed yourself, you fill yourself up. And then during the day, you empty yourself and you destroy. That means, in the end of the day, you're exhausted. Because you exhausted your energy. You were external, you radiated like the sun. You were just radiating constantly. You were giving away from your core. So your Manipura was burning energy to the outside. You were burning the nectar. And then, at night, when you're exhausted, you have to lay down again and feed yourself again. So you as a human being, and somehow as every being, you're circulating between these two poles. You're circulating between falling back to the inside in a state of unconsciousness in which you're fed, where you fall into an embryonal state, and that state where from that kind of embryonal state you are basically born out of your bondage to the mother somehow. You're cutting off your connection to the nectar and you start to expand and work interestingly, it's the giver of nirvana, the day. Why is it the giver of nirvana? Because it is the way to self-conscious action. It's an important part. You need to act in order to achieve, also in order to come over your limitations. But you can only do it within a certain range. Otherwise, you exhaust yourself too much and you die. Isn't it interesting, no? Like there is this, I think it's so fascinating if you look at it in an archetypical manner, there is this state which is almost paradisal, in which you exist in paradise. It's a state close to the mother, let's say, it's in the moon. You exist in the moon. And in this moon, you have everything you need. You have the nectar, you exist in bliss. But you have no consciousness. See, you exist there, but you don't exist. You exist in two forms. On the one hand, you could say you exist in completion, you're complete. You exist in this nectar, this pleasure runs through you at night. But you have no consciousness about it. So there is no self somehow to live out of it. And then you wake up during the day, you gain consciousness and you exhaust it. And somehow these two parts, being fed and being self-reliant, which is usually, being unconscious and not self-reliant, and then being somehow conscious but not being responsible enough to be self-reliant, like these two parts, they need to circle around another till hopefully at one point in your individual evolution you will reach the ability to be full self-conscious, like the day, but at the same time self-reliant, like in that primary state, and you will fuse the nectar and the sun in one. So we'll experience the bliss of like universal existence, oneness of the nectar in full self-consciousness. But before you achieve that, you circle between these two poles constantly. Because somehow, being in deep sleep is samadhi. It's only that you don't know it. And you wake up and you're fully refreshed from a deep sleep. You were in samadhi. There is this kind of far dream inside your head about some miraculous world you have seen, but you don't know anymore. It's also life and death. It's so many things, you see. It's like you live a life, you're born as a little kid, and you remember there was something before. It's like waking up in the morning, and you're full of energy. And then you live the day, or you live a whole life, and then you die slowly in fear. Like most people, many people, before they go to bed, they're afraid, they don't want to sleep. They don't want to fall into unconsciousness. It's an expression of their archetypical fear of death, actually. Because in the end of your life, you will experience that state. It will be the state shortly before going to bed. This will be basically the state which you will have when you're 75, 80. It's the time where you have to go to bed, but maybe you will not want to. And then after the time, where you finally go to bed, you will dissolve again to recrystallize. So it's not only a day, it's all of your life that is inside these two polarizations. And that is somehow also cut into singular days. So anyways, these two primary principles that govern your life, which is the night and the day, exist outside in the world also, in these symbolic representations of the sun and the moon. And they exist within your body in form of the energy channels, Ida and Pingala. Ida means nourishing, and Pingala means reddish. That's what it means. There is more to it, more mysticism to it, on which I speak maybe later about. There is more mysticism about Ida and Pingala also. But I continue now, just that we can talk a little bit more about the nadis. Okay? In the human body, there are 350,000 nadis. In other scriptures, there are more. 8.4 million, all kinds of things exist, like the asanas. In the human body, there are 350,000 nadis. Out of them, 14 are principal. What he's just saying, Shiva in the Shiva Samhita, is just saying there are many. Okay, many nadis. 350,000 is a number you cannot comprehend. These are Sushumna, Ida, Pingala, Gandharvi, and so on. So he's naming many different nadis. Of these, Ida, Pingala, and Sushumna are the major ones. So he's saying the left, the right, and the central channel are the primary ones. Among these three, Sushumna is the chief of all and dear to all yogis, as all the other nadis take shelter in it. This is not a traditional scripture, but I will still read it to you. Okay, that's the Chakra Nirupana. Okay, it's a treatise from the 16th century, and it's that text from which the system of the 7 chakras became popular in the West. Basically, he took it, like the author took it from various other sources, but it's one of the scriptures that brought us basically the teachings of the 7 chakras. In the space outside the Meru, the holy mountain, placed on the left and right are moon and the sun nadis. The nadi Sushumna, whose substance is the threefold of the gunas, is in the middle. She is in the form of the moon, sun, and fire. He's using the term she. Yeah. He refers to the energy, so the goddess. It's already a hint. There is Kundalini there. She's in the form of sun, moon, and fire. Her body, it's her body, a string of blooming datura flowers. So there are many flowers on a string. Extends from the middle of the kanda, which is the root, to the head. And the vajra, the lightning, inside her extends shining from the phallus, the medra, because in this case it's a meditating man, from the phallus to the head. Inside her is Chitrini, that means that what is filled up by consciousness, by Chit, who is lustrous like the luster of the pranava, who is amazing like the Om, and attainable in yoga by yogis. She, Chitrini, is subtle as a spider's thread, and pierces all the lotuses which are placed within the backbone, and is pure intelligence. This is very mystical. What he's writing here is, inside this line that extends from the base of your body to the top of your head, which is like lightning, there is consciousness, Chitrini, it's a certain nadi. Okay? And it's lustrous, it shines like the pranava, like Om. Okay? She is as subtle, this line that goes from the base to the top of the head, she is subtle as a spider's thread. So she's very thin. Sushumna in this case is very, very thin. And she pierces all the lotuses which are placed within the backbone and is pure intelligence. So this power of consciousness is piercing the lotuses, chakras, which are along the backbone, the spinal cord, and she's intelligence. Okay? She, Chitrini, is beautiful by reason of these lotuses, which are strung on her. Inside her is Brahma Nadi, the channel of Brahma, the channel of God, who is Shabda Brahma, which is Brahman in form of sound, which extends from her orifice to the mouth, to the place beyond where the deity of the beginning is. This is basically what's written here. So I had hoped I have to continue reading in order to come to the actual mentioning of Sushumna, I think. I just continue because I wanted to... She, Chitrini Nadi, is beautiful like a chain of lightning and like a lotus fiber, and shines in the middle of the sages. She's extremely supple, the awakener of pure knowledge, the embodiment of all bliss. Whose true nature is pure consciousness. The Brahma Deva shines in her mouth. This place, in the entrance to the origin, is sprinkled by ambrosia, and she's called the knot, as also the mouth of Sushumna. Okay, what's actually written here is that in the center, between the left and the right side, and this is very symbolic, okay, so you have to read it as a piece of art more and as a vision more than you have to take every single expression on the page, okay. This is like he's painting a picture, okay, and this picture, if you just fall into it, communicates you something. And what he's saying, there is the left and the right side, the sun and the moon, and in the middle there is this one channel stretching from the base up to the head, which is very beautiful and which is piercing the lotuses. And inside this channel is she consciousness, flows in that channel, okay, and it's very beautiful, and it's pure intelligence that is running inside there, okay. And so how do we connect this now to the sun and the moon? Okay, we connect this in this manner, that the sun is not only the wakeful state, it's also externality. Okay, and the moon is not only the sleeping state, but it's internality. Okay, and somehow the whole world that you experience, all the world that you experience, is, or everything that you experience within the world, all your life, has three components. If you want, you could say it has two components, and one of them you can split up in two more, so you have three components. Okay, and these three components are the object that is outside, so the objective world, which is Pingala, the subjective world, so the world that is inside, which means the world of thoughts, imaginations, feelings, memories, the internal world, okay? And again, as a counterpart, the external world, the objective world. And these two worlds, the outside world and the inside world, because it's true, everybody, no matter what he experiences in his life, says, there is an outside world and there is my inside, my internal world that is positioning itself in relationship to this outside world. These are your two primary categories. But there is a third category that everybody experiences and many people overlook. This is the observer. It is the person, the undefined, undifferentiated person that experiences this phenomenon of the outside world and of the inside world. You always have that. Everybody has that. And the more you meditate, or the deeper you go a little bit in your own experience, the more you figure out that this observer very often is experienced in a neutral position. You're just here. You're always just here. You experience sorrow, pain, fear, love, passion, sadness, boredom, whatever, but you're always just here. And what you really are is this thing that is just here, but you're not really involved. There is an involvement outside of you. There's the world outside that works on the world inside. The world outside that influences the world outside that influences the world inside. And the third is just the observer that experiences this working of the inside and the outside world onto another. That's the way it's also written in the Bhagavad Gita. It's just the gunas outside that work on the gunas inside. The gunas are the elements of nature, the forces of nature. So, there is the observer. That's the third category. Well, we have Ida, Pingala and Sushumna. We have the outside, we have the inside, we have Sushumna. Sushumna is the observer. And that's the aim of meditation, to come into the observer. So the aim of meditation is also to come into Sushumna. But who is the observer? If you use a different term for it, who is it? Consciousness, Chit, is the observer. The observer is ever-shining consciousness. This is Sushumna. And we talked about the philosophy of yoga, in which we had in the philosophy of Tantra the statement that the whole universe is sustained by consciousness. Everything emerges out of it and everything goes back into it. Somehow the whole universe therefore is sustained by Sushumna. And yes, also in the symbology it's like this, because all the things are arrayed around the Mount Meru. All the things encircle the Mount Meru, who is nobody else than pure consciousness, lustrous and beautiful, like it's written in the Chakra Nirupana. Also Chakra Nirupana. So this energy of consciousness, this power of consciousness, is the energy circulating within Sushumna. Okay, this is now very, very interesting. And what does this help us now? What do we do with this? Well, you see, yoga, the science of yoga is not so much interested, as I told already, in manipulating the body, but we want to find ways to access consciousness. Okay? And this symbolic representation of the phenomena of consciousness, the outside and the inside world, and the central place, which is the place of the observer, helps us to on the one hand, picture the inside world through the symbolic representation and find a way to influence the inside world. In yoga, we are trying to come into the center, so we are trying to experience the observer. This is also something that we learned in the Yoga Sutras and Patanjali, and also in the Samkhya philosophy, that the yogic philosophy is aiming for developing awareness about the distinction of the world and the one who observes this world. So we want to develop awareness about Sushumna, basically, awareness about the one, the self and the energy of the self. And in this yogic philosophy here, a lot of the yogic techniques are actually designed and are here in order to make the prana leave Ida and Pingala to enter Sushumna, which means to come into the center, or to balance basically Ida and Pingala so that the energy can come into the center. In the Hatha Yoga Pratipika we have the term, and the two nadis become lifeless, and then Kevala arises. Yeah? This term just means that the prana is withdrawn from the left and the right side into the center. Which just means, if you think about what it means of consciousness, you're not outside, you're not inside, you're in the center. And this is what you really want to do. Because when you teach yoga and when you practice yoga, where are you not with your mind? You're not at the other practitioners. You know, you're not looking how good they look like or how bad they look like, and you think, oh, you're just falling. You know, you're not thinking this. But you're also not inside, and you're also not thinking, how do I feel? How am I? I'm like this, I'm like that. Not interesting. We are not psychologizing you. I don't know how to say this in English. You are not interested in your own psychology at all. You know, there is this approach, also somehow, through our Western mindset, where we still think, you know, you have to ask yourself constantly for permission of doing something. You yourself. How do I feel? Is it okay if I'm doing that? How do I feel here? Is it okay if I'm doing that? You're constantly in a conversation with yourself. But the truth is, you're just in your conversation with your own limitations. It's like being in conversation with the outside world. It's just that in this case the inside world, but it's only objects. It's either the outside object you're talking to or the inside object you're talking to. But what you really want to do is, you want to dissolve these objects to come into a state of power, a state of awareness. You see? But if you're asking yourself, how am I feeling? What am I, where do I come from? Where does this come from? What am I thinking? What does this feeling mean? What does this thought mean? You're just negotiating with limited objects. You're negotiating with the object of your feeling, with the object of your thought, with the object of your individual insight. And it's not better than negotiating with outer objects. People think, it's a bad thing to be dependent on outer objects. But I'm telling you, it's also bad to be dependent on inner objects. It's the same thing. It's not good to be dependent on money or on a certain physical action, a certain sexual relation, or any kind of relation to a person or to a thing. But it's also not good to be attached to your internal constructions, internal objects, internal persons, internal thoughts, internal opinions, internal feelings. Not good, because they are the same deluding. And you know what? It's really something you can find out for yourself. Take psychology very serious, just as an experiment. Put yourself down at home and negotiate with yourself. Oh, I'm feeling like this. Where does it come from? How do I feel? Go deep into it. You will discover something very interesting. It never ends. It seriously never, ever ends. And this is very funny, to observe. It always goes deeper. There is some kind of layer, and there is another layer, and there is one more layer, and all these layers are connected, which is a new layer. And then you discover a completely new plane of layers, and it always continues. So forget the internal world. So in yoga, you're not outside, but you're also not inside. Where are you? You're in the state of power. You're in the state of awareness. From there you act. And from there you oversee the internal world clearly. And you oversee the external world clearly. You're not falling into passivity. You're not falling into activity. And somehow, what is passivity? Relaxation. What is activity? Strength. And you're in between. You're stretching up, and then you relax. You see? You pull, and then you relax. You're always in between. So in between relaxation and tension, which is the same as internality and externality. And when we say hold awareness, be aware, that's what we are saying, because awareness is the power of consciousness. That's what it is. Also in the Yoga Sutras, you cannot see your own consciousness. It's not possible. That's what we read. Because if you would, then the mind would implode. That's what it's written in the Yoga Sutras. You would reflect on consciousness infinitely and your mind would just collapse. Very funny picture. So he's saying that, okay? But what you can do is, you can develop the power of awareness, which is expression of that consciousness. So you can have focus. That's why attention, or the ability to concentrate, is so important. Because concentration is expression of the power of awareness, which is expression of consciousness. Concentration is not consciousness, but it is part of that power that awakens consciousness. That's the magic about it. So, in yoga, therefore, we are trying to balance Ida and Pingala to come into the center, to rest in this power of consciousness. This is the aim of Hatha Yoga. Originally Hatha means force. That's what it actually means. It doesn't mean sun, moon. It's just later Gorakshanata interpreted it as Hatha, as sun, moon, in order to make it more accessible to normal people who wanted to practice Hatha Yoga. But actually, what the word really means is force. And this is, why does it mean force? Because Hatha Yoga is depicted to awaken siddhis, to awaken magical powers. And these magical powers are awakened when Ida and Pingala are balanced. So when the energies of the outside world and the energies of the inside world come together, then in this state of alertness, magic is awakened. Why is this? I personally deeply believe it. But the magic is not always that what you think that it is, but it is awakened. Why is it awakened? Why must it be awakened? Why can't it be otherwise that magic is awakened? It's because the world is magic. the very nature of all of your life is magic. And children, when they have no mind to bother them, they know that the world is magic. It is absolutely magical, and it's always more than what you think. What I already told you, everything that you can experience is infinitely more than what you think that it is. Every boring object, like a smartphone, is incredibly a lot. It's very fascinating. And when you start to travel inside the objects, beyond these objects, you can discover things which is then the actual magic. Maybe when you're able to really see the other person, because you have no barrier in your mind, you're able to see the thoughts of the other person. And this is then clairvoyance, this is then magic. And maybe if you're able to see the flower really as what it is, you're able to feel nature and what she wants to say, and this is magic. You see, I think the world itself is just magic. It's completely magical, because it's so much more than we can comprehend. And the space beyond the objective, so the space that is not limiting the world in an object, an outside object or inside object, this space is the space from which you can really see the world. You could also say this in other words, you can see the world when you come into the state of sushumna. So when you come into the state of meditation, or the state of the observer, then the world becomes visible. The world is not visible in Ida and Pingala, because Pingala is your outward projection of objectivity, and Ida is your inward projection. They are both projections. There is no real there. Pingala wants to manipulate the world constantly according to its own will, and Ida wants to withdraw from the world constantly in order to dissolve away nothingness. You have these two streams, and they are both not real. They are both not seeing the world actually. So, Hatha is force. Force, that's where it comes from. And Hatha Yoga originally aimed for, also, to balance the left side and the right side, so to awaken Kundalini. That is what? That is the power of consciousness, who is beautiful. And this power of consciousness has the ability to transcend your limitations. Which are the chakras? Come later to the form of it. You could look at them this way. They are levels of limitations within you. And this Kundalini transcends them. So the power of consciousness can go through the layers of your limitation to unfold. Okay? For this we look in the Hatha Yoga Pratipika. I hope I find the as one opens a door with a key, so the yogi should open the gate to liberation with Kundalini. The great goddess Kundalini sleeps, closing with her mouth the opening through which one can ascend to Brahmarandra, the crown of the head, to that place where there is neither pain nor suffering. The Kundalini sleeps above the Kanda, where the nadis converge. She gives liberation to the yogi and is bondage to the fool. He who knows Kundalini knows yoga. The Kundalini is said to be coiled like a serpent. He who can induce her to move upward is liberated. There is no doubt about it. Between Ganga and Yamuna sits a young widow arousing compassion. One should despoil her, for this leads to the supreme seat of Vishnu. The sacred Ganga is Ida, and Yamuna is Pingala. Between Ida and Pingala sits the young widow, Kundalini. What does this mean? So first of all, he's saying, in our path, so in the path of Hatha Yoga, in the path of yoga, we are not only just sitting and we are meditating. No, we open the gate to liberation with Kundalini. So which means we are not like the Samkhya would say, I observe the outer object and I always go to the more subtle object from the outer object till I reach the subtlest object of all, which is Purusha, consciousness. But we are not going that way. No, we are yogis. We are not Samkhya meditators. We are Hatha yogis. We are Kundalini yogis. So what are we doing? We are awakening consciousness with the power of consciousness, and we are making this power of consciousness ascend. So we are stretching and we are breathing and we are pulling and we are relaxing and we are bringing everything to the center, and in this very center we are awakening the energy and we are experiencing that energy rise. And that power of consciousness is our key that opens the gate to liberation. Okay? One should open the door with a key, or just like one opens the door with a key, so the yogi should open the gate to liberation with Kundalini. I also will explain you later why she's coiled, which is beautiful, I think. When I explain you this later, it's beautiful. It's so beautiful. Because for now you do not know why she's coiled. It's beautiful. So anyways, and then, but what is she, you know? First of all, she gives liberation to the yogi, but she's bondage to the fool. How is this? She's bondage to the fool. If you're a fool, she's bondage to you. Now, there's many reasons for this, and one of the reasons is that she is the one who created the world. So, like awakening Kundalini or experiencing Kundalini means experience the world. So it means to experience the ecstasy of the world, but somehow it is their world. So if you live in the world and if you're bound in the world, you're bound by Kundalini. You know, you're bound by the power, the energy of the world. You know, and she in a way is this energy. It's only that when Kundalini is awakened, you experience the outside world inside. So you're liberated from it, because it's inside, it's there anyways. But when you're not liberated, you experience Kundalini outside. So you would experience Kundalini in the pleasure of drinking 10 beers, or in the pleasure of possessing a woman, in the pleasure of possessing a house, and you would be lost, because the woman will sue you and the house will burn down. So nothing. You will have nothing. So it's not really there. So she is the world. You know, she is that what creates the world. She's all the world. Okay? The world is either outside or the world is inside. So somehow Kundalini is here. This is the amazing thing, you know. People think, you know, in their heads, but is Kundalini such a magical thing? What is it? I tell you what Kundalini is. You experience it right now. It's the amazing experience of your existence. You know, because people say, but Kundalini must be something magical. Yes, it is. But it's not more magical than the fact that you are right now here. And be honest to yourself, you know. Maybe you have forgotten it already. But you knew it when you were a little kid. Isn't it amazing that you're here? It's so amazing. Wow. We are here, you know. What is this? You know, we are a person, and I don't know where I come from, you know. I don't know where I'm going, and there's this world out there with the sky and the trees, and wow. It's really amazing, you know. This is Kundalini. She is that, giving you that world. You should appreciate that. Now she's creating that magic show around you. Isn't that amazing? That's her energy. You know, that's the energy of the goddess. You know, that are creating these patterns of energy around you which you experience as your experience. You know? Yeah, I think it's great. So anyways, there is more to say about her. So she is what? Between the two rivers, Ganga and Yamuna, sits a young widow aroused in compassion. So there is between two rivers a woman without a husband. The two rivers are Ida and Pingala. So the two rivers are the force of the sun and the force of the moon, and they merge. And between these two, there sits a woman, but she's alone. What does it mean? It means it's you and it's everybody, you know. It's your individual consciousness that is cut. You're separated. Because what you experience yourself, you are alone. You're completely alone. When you go to the forest, you experience the energies of the world. You experience Kundalini somehow. You experience the forest. You don't know that you experience Kundalini. That's the amazing thing. You have no idea. But you experience Kundalini without knowing it. You experience the forest and you think, and you're alone. Yeah, I'm just there. I'm in the forest. You don't know what that means. You don't know why you're here. You don't know where your life is going. You don't know when you will die. You do not know why you are born. You don't know anything. You're just in that forest and you're experiencing that energy of your existence and you do not know why at all. And this is the experience of everyone somehow. And this is your being a widow. Everybody is a widow. Who is the husband? You know, in a very archetypical sense. The husband is the formless, you know, the male archetype represents the non-form, but it's the reason, it's meaning. You know, the husband represents also the vogue, the consonants, form, direction. The husband is the meaning. It's the one who will tell you, you are here because of this and that reason. You are that, that's your mission, you are that form. It's the unification with your mission. Somehow, your very essential being, somehow, that is formless, that has no form, you know, that has no body. You know, the husband has no body. He also does not bring about the children. The woman brings about the children, so she has the body, which means he brings about the body. All men are born out of a woman. All men have therefore a female body, you could say. Because all the bodies originate from the woman, so somehow all the bodies must be female. You know, in a very archetypical sense, that's what the human being believes. The body is female, the mother, meta. You know, that's where it comes from. But the male principle is without body. It's just the meaning of things. It's its way. It's the beginning and it's the very end. You know, the biblical story is very often depicted as anti-feministic, which is, I think, is not right if you think about it. Because it has a certain, or if you interpret it through the right perspective, let's say it like this, because you can think about it from many different perspectives. But you can choose an interpretation that is actually very interesting. And the interpretation is that they say that it is mean, you know, that this idea that Eve was created out of the rib of Adam. But if you strip it off this personal residue of man and woman, then you have this idea of Adam is just logos, it's sense. And out of the sense, what is the rib? The heart. Out of the heart of the sense is created life, you know, which is the female part, which is life. And I think it's not at all, you know, in a way, a minorization of that, what the female part is depicted to be, because it's depicted as being all the life. No, it's not at all a reduction. Actually, you know, the male part in this archetype, of course, inhabits a nice place in that sense of being the beginning and the end. But the female part is everything that's in between, and that's also a lot, because otherwise nothing would be. You know, it's this. Coming out of the heart of the meaning comes the form, you know? And this form then falls out of childhood innocence. And here's also a very interesting story. The woman is not bad that she tempts Adam to eat the apple. It's actually very interesting, that story, you know, if you think about it. What it means, why? Where does the story come from? The story comes from this, that the body of life demands consciousness in order to be able to live. Because the body of life cannot live unconsciously. You cannot live in a dream state. So the body of life reaches consciousness first, because she first eats from the apple. Which means Kundalini is there. And then the energy of consciousness kind of awakens consciousness. You know, it aims for consciousness, it drags consciousness into existence. So like, but this idea of the male part is this pure unbound consciousness that is formless. And the body of life demands that formless part to enter life in order to be able to live. So basically the unbound soul, which has no beginning and no end, is dragged into existence by the demand of consciousness, so in order to be able to live. And then, once the demand of consciousness is basically fulfilled, consciousness enters the body, the individual being falls out of paradise and begins its individual journey in life. And what is that apple? It's the apple of realization. I think it's a great story, you know, somehow. It's the apple of realization. You know, and then God, by the way, because the story continues, which is so nice, because I read that story, and it continues like this. It's also not because people would say it's a patriarchal story, not at all. The story continues with, I think, you know, that first of all they realize they are naked, you know, which is also a funny thing, you know, because realizing that they're naked means they realize they're vulnerable. And this is what the being realizes when it reaches self-consciousness. You know, when you reach self-consciousness, you realize you will die. This is the realization, I am naked. It's the same thing. You know, I'm vulnerable. And then Adam hides behind the bush when God passes by the paradise. I know the story continues like this, you know, God continues to walk through Garden Eden and he doesn't find Adam and Eve anymore. And and then Adam hides behind the bush and God's saying, why do you hide behind the bush? What are you doing there? And Adam says, well, because I'm naked. And God says, yeah, why do you know that you're naked? And then here comes the funny part. He blames the woman. You know, Adam is saying, but it's also archetypical, you know, he's saying, well, I'm naked because Eve gave me the apple to eat. And now that's why I'm naked. She's responsible. And this is also very funny because this is also quite archetypical, you know, that when the human being comes to realize its vulnerability, you know, it usually blames the world for it. You know, always. You blame the world. And in a it's like this. The world is bad, that's what they say. But it's not true. It's not the truth. You know, the world only demanded self-consciousness in order to be, so that you can be, and so that, like it's in the sutras, realize your own nature, which is the journey. The Christian mythology doesn't give us an answer to this, why this is actually the case. Maybe why are we living? It gives us to some degree a little bit an answer, the Christian mythology, by saying that Jesus Christ is the Son of God. You know? Because when Jesus Christ is the Son of God, it means that basically God itself went into the world. And why should God come into the world if he wouldn't want to? So to some degree, the Christian story is also saying that you want to be in the world, and even God itself wants to be in the world. So there is a very deep desire to live. And this deep desire to live can only be grounded in the fact that life is good. So even if that you're falling out of the paradise, it is good that you are living. And the Patanjali Yoga Sutras say the same thing. Existence exists so that you can realize your own unbound nature. That's why you are. So we went a little bit far into this, you know, but I just wanted to explain why she's a widow. So she's a widow because she's cut off the one unbound universal consciousness. She's the power of consciousness, but she's individualized. She's cut off. It is your individual consciousness. It is not the one unlimited, unbound consciousness. But funnily, you know, in this little sentence in the Hatha Yoga Pratipika, you also have already an answer how to reach liberation. No, it's it's in one sentence, it's already inside. In my personal opinion, everything is in this sentence. One should despoil her, for this leads the supreme seat of Vishnu. So you should be loving to her. You should despoil her. Who is she? She's the world. And she's you. She's your soul somehow. It creates the world. You should despoil her. When do you despoil somebody? When you have compassion with that person, when you love that person. That's what you should do. So you should have compassion with yourself and with the world and with everybody in the world. Because everyone in this world is this little soul that is left alone and that is trying to find the way home. And you should be loving to everyone, because really everyone deserves it. And even the greatest criminal deserves it, because in his heart, he's this one special being that fell out of paradise and that wants to go back home. And you should really be the one to hug that person, and to help that person to find its own nature. And the more you realize about your own nature, the more you should do that. You should awaken the sleeping serpent. And now here comes a little bit martialish, I don't know the English word, a little bit more brutal Hatha yogic part, okay? Mm-hmm. You should awaken the sleeping serpent by grasping its tail. The Shakti, when aroused, moves upwards. After inhaling through the right nostril, perform Kumbhaka according to the rules. Then rotate the Shakti constantly for 1 hour and a half, both at sunrise and at sunset. The khanda upon which the Kundalini rests with its tail lies above the anus and extends 4 inches. It is described of a round shape and is covered by a piece of soft white cloth. Seated in Vajra posture, firmly hold the feet near the ankles and be against the khanda. In the posture of Vajrasana, the yogi should induce the Kundalini to move, and he should do Bhastrika Kumbhaka. Thus the Kundalini will be quickly awakened. Then he should contract the sun and thus induce the Kundalini to rise. Even though he may be in the jaws of death, the yogi has nothing to fear. Shakti Kalana Mudra. When one moves the Kundalini fearlessly for about an hour and a half, she is drawn up a little into the Sushumna. In this way, she naturally leaves the opening of Sushumna, free, and is carried upward by the prana current. In this way, one should daily move the Kundalini. The yogi who does this is free from disease. The yogi who moves the Shakti gains the siddhis. Why talk so much about it? With ease he conquers time. That yogi only who leads the life of a celibate and observes a moderate and healthy diet will reach perfection in proper manipulation of the Kundalini within 45 days. Once the Kundalini has been set in motion, he should persistently practice Bhastrika Kumbhaka. He who is perfect in yamas and practices thus never need fear death through his own Kundalini. What other ways are there to prevent the pollution of the 72,000 nadis? The Sushumna is straightened through asanas, pranayama and mudras. He who practices this with unflagging concentration obtains siddhi powers through Shambhavi and the other mudras. Then he's just saying that the mudras are a way to awaken Kundalini. So he's just saying that there are these pranayama practices, which he didn't detail here a lot, through which you, by holding the breath, you pull the breath in, you hold the breath, and then the Kundalini is straightened through this process. On another part in the Hatha Yoga Pratipika, he's also explaining that basically holding after the in-breath or also holding after the out-breath and then applying Mula Bandha will fuse the pranas at the base of the spine and then create the necessary heat in order to awaken the energy of consciousness within. So it's basically saying that this kumbhaka, so the holding of the breath between the in-breath and between the out-breath, is one of the ways to awaken Kundalini. Why is this, by the way? You could very bluntly ask, why is this? First of all, he explains here that this is because the pranas then fuse and create a special heat, and this heat makes the snake stretch out. But there's also a different reason behind it, because by holding the breath, you come into the space that is between the breaths. And the space between the breaths is the space that is nor inside nor outside. You see, every breath is not only the in and the out breath, it's also the consciousness movement to externality and the consciousness movement to internality. Therefore, it is the sun and the moon. And if it is the sun and the moon, then it is the whole day. Because when you breathe out the sun. And then when you hold the breath outside, the sun sets. And when you breathe in, there is the night. And when you hold the breath inside, then there is sunrise. And then after the sunrise comes the exhalation again and the day. And when should you move the Kundalini? When he's saying it? Well, you should move her at sunrise, at both sunrise and at sunset. So not only should you practice yoga, Hatha Yoga, at sunrise and sunset, or your Kundalini Yoga at sunrise and sunset. No, you should also discover the place of sunrise and sunset within you. And the place of sunrise is holding of the breath after the inhalation. This is sunrise. And sunset is holding the breath after exhalation. So you have to discover this place within you, the refreshing, beautiful, powerful sunrise, and the empty, beautiful, clarifying sunset. And again here, these places are not just outside, they're inside. I think what we talked about today is very mystical. It is very mystical in order the outside world is also inside of you. And that coming in the space in between the breaths is the place where there is energy. And coming in the place that is not in the outside object and not in the inside object is the place where you are in awareness. And where you can discover the power of awareness. And where you can discover the real world that is beyond your projections. All this is very mystical. And I invite you to understand these things. And you know how you understand them. Because there is a very easy way to understand them. Very good practice. Yes, it's right. Yeah. There's also something else which leads to practice, or which is the right attitude in practice. Because practice is the whole world. The world becomes visible through practice. But there is also an attitude, which is also a practice, that I want to give you. And this attitude is, forget everything I've said. Everything, and try to understand what we have said from a mystical perspective. Try to understand it intuitively. Try not to understand it objectively. The object of your memory, the object of your understanding is not interesting. Forget it. Forget the fact that the sun is the day and the moon is the night. Forget everything. It's useless. Try to understand what we have said as a picture that says something about you and that says something about the world. And intuitively, that picture will make an insight arise inside of you. This is the way you approach this knowledge. So you don't approach it in particularity. You approach it just as an insight, and you forget everything we have said. The whole Shiva Samhita is like this. It's just mystical knowledge. It's just painting pictures, and you're not holding on a specific picture. Where he's talking about how is the body and how are these nadis, and there are sages and mountains and oceans, It's just intuitive, it's a vision. And the vision comes and the vision goes again, and you're forgetting. So the hottest tip I can give you is forget everything I've said and just experience. And the other very hot tip I can give you is the tip you gave: practice. And practice with this attitude of just intuitively experiencing.
Om Shanti, Shanti, Shanti.
Namaste.